Hi, I'm McCartney Hagar. Welcome back to Alabama Care. Today we're going to be talking about disability and the justice system. Hold on, let me mute my computer. Okay, so I'm really looking forward to getting into this because it's such an important issue. But I do want to give a bit of a disclaimer here. This is not really easy to talk about, and I'd really like for anyone if you're not really if you're very sensitive or you're not really in a place where, discrimination is something you can talk about, then I'd really like you to be careful with how you engage with this and, feel free to, head out anytime and come back. I'll try and give warnings whenever we talk about anything potentially upsetting, but, and not everyone's gonna like what we talk about today. I certainly don't, but, ultimately, these are facts, and facts that could help people protect themselves and understand the world they're living in. And, when I got this job, I was told that anything I do should be with the purpose of helping people. And that's why we're going to talk about this today. And not everyone's going to like me after this, but, nothing personal. I get it. So, I guess just be kind to yourselves and yeah, please hear me out before you send Alex any nasty emails. So I think most of us probably know what the justice system is. It's, juries, courts, police, it's the Supreme Court even, and it's designed to make sure everyone follows laws, treat each other well. It's just designed to keep us safe. And our founding fathers put a lot of work into making sure that this system treated everyone fairly. And despite our best efforts, well, it doesn't. And this is where I think I'm going to lose people, but it doesn't. And, lots of communities face discrimination, and the disability community, I think, kind of gets forgotten in that it's not just a medical problem, it's social too. That's what makes things harder for us. So, yeah, that's what we're going to talk about today. And I think this is really important for people to know, what is at stake, to know your rights so you can prepare in case, the odds are we're all going to end up mixed up in something at some point in our lives. So it's important to understand everything that we can. So the first thing I'm going to talk about here is sort of the representation of people with disabilities in the justice system. And when I say representation, I mean how many people are that have disabilities are involved in have been in contact with police or they've been to court or something. And I mean, as you can imagine, we're usually fighting for rights and insurance and all these good things. So we have a lot of, we're pretty familiar with laws and our rights and the justice system. But we can pull up this article from the ARC here, and it shows that there's a lot more, even with that in mind, a lot more than you would expect. So, so people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, particularly, they don't have access to justice, don't have access to lawyers, and the truth is, I've talked about this in school as well in the medical field. A lot of people just aren't aware of people with disabilities. They don't know we exist, and they don't know how to accommodate us to give us what we need. So this leads to a lot of discrimination and accidents and mistakes being made when people are in court or for anything like that, interacting with police. So we have here some just statistics. This is a really great resource. We can scroll down. There's several organizations working on this. We have Pathways to Justice. There's lots of ways. This isn't a hopeless issue, and I like to make that clear throughout the broadcast that this is really, nothing is hopeless, and that's why we talk about it. So the ARC is very active in helping people with intellectual and developmental disabilities and making sure everyone has good representation. So that's a great resource. But again, we're more likely to be in the justice system or more likely to get convicted of a crime and go to prison. It talks about this kind of in the article, but it's a bit difficult to like pull it all up. So y'all can access that as you want to. So one thing that I think is really important, and again, this is potentially upsetting, so please be careful. We're going to be talking about violence a little bit, so be cautious with that. So the next thing we're going to pull up is a trend that researchers have come across, and that's that 50% of people killed in police interactions are disabled. So that's not easy to confront, but we've seen a lot of people talking about police interactions and how things get out of hand very easily. Assumptions are made. So we have this happening, especially with people with disabilities too. So, right, we have a lot of Black and disabled activists speaking out about this and trying to figure out the root of the problem and sort of deal with it. Because obviously, one important component of our justice system is that you're innocent until you're proven guilty. And you're not proven guilty until you've been in a court of law and seen by a jury. So, despite how things may look, if a police officer kills you before you've stood trial, then justice was not done. Because, there's no evidence, there's no trial, and that's not how our justice system is meant to work. So we have several people with disabilities. Sarah Bland with epilepsy and depression, Eric Garner with asthma, diabetes, and a heart condition, Freddie Gray with developmental disability. So many people who are getting the police called on them or just being in the wrong place at the wrong time. When there's limited abilities to understand what someone is saying to you, limited abilities to act accordingly, bad things can happen and mistakes can be made. So if we want to scroll down, I believe um, Haben Girma talked about this a little bit, but she is a lawyer. Let's see, I think she's in this article. So she's a lawyer, the first deafblind Black, person to go to Harvard Law and graduate. She's a huge inspiration of mine. I read her biography and she's amazing. So, and she talks about how, if someone thought she was committing a crime and they told her, for example, put your hands up. Well, she's deaf. She can't comply. And when people don't comply, it's automatically assumed that that's an act of aggression. But we're going to see here that because of assumptions, stereotypes, all these things about disability, that's happening a lot, and people are getting hurt because of it. So I'm going to go kind of case by case here and look at the 3 different people. One of these has happened really recently. All of them, I think, were within the past year or 2. So the first person we're going to talk about, again, this is upsetting extremely. Violence is a big force at play here, so please be careful, and if that's not something you'd like for this evening, feel free to leave and come back at any time. So yes, so we had a guy named Richard Lee Richards, a wheelchair user, 60s. He was shot 9 times from behind, meaning he was running away, or rather rolling, because like me, he was a wheelchair user. So this man, Richards, he allegedly, because again, he was never alive to stand trial, allegedly stole a toolbox from a Walmart. And he died because of that. And allegedly, he had a knife. Well, I'm just going to be honest here. A wheelchair user with a knife. Scooters are not fast. I could not outrun an abled person if I tried. So, the excuse of why this officer chose to use deadly force was, 1, he had a knife. Again, someone who can't stand holding a knife. Not much arm reach there. And then 2, well, the wheelchair was in the way of using a taser. So had this man not been in a wheelchair, or rather using a wheelchair, he might still be alive. Because again, stealing a toolbox is not a crime punishable by death. That's not how it works. So, again, assumptions were made. People feared that, he was going to do something or put someone else at risk, and so he died. And this police officer was fired after a few weeks and some investigation. They didn't agree that that was necessary. So, hopefully, but I think people aren't prepared to deal with wheelchair users. They didn't know. They didn't, that, people can't imagine us being out in the world. They act like we don't exist, And it's because there's so many access barriers. I wrote a thing for, it was like a little blog post for Camp Asco one time. And I said, I actually kind of feel at home at hospitals sometimes because it's the only place I see other people like me so frequently. And it's like, hey, I like your chair. So when you have that kind of access going on, people don't know how to deal with us. And things that are different scare people. And that's how you get into situations like this. So, and I know some people are out there saying, well, this guy threatened someone with a knife. He shouldn't have done that. Yes, he should not have. But again, innocent until proven guilty. And everyone deserves equal protection under the laws. Even people with disabilities. Even people that are making mistakes and doing bad things. If they're going to be punished for a crime, then it should be equal to the crime. And that guy didn't do anything to deserve to die. So, in a similar vein, we're going to talk about this person actually. There was no violence involved whatsoever. So, the next person we're going to talk about is Elijah Mclean. Shifting kind of to a different kind of disability here. Elijah had sickle cell anemia, meaning, blood things. I know the symptoms, but I don't know if that's necessarily relevant. But he got cold frequently because of the circulation problems, and he wore a ski mask in the winter. And because of that, the police were called on him, and because he looked suspicious, quote. And I have, okay, some sources say he had like another disability, like an intellectual developmental disability. Others, no, so I can't really I don't really know what happened there, but supposedly he was confused. He said there was no warrant for anyone to come and arrest him. So, yeah, he ended up in a cartoid hold and injected with ketamine. And this ultimately affected his heart, and he died as a result. And again, doing nothing, walking down the street. Right, yeah, thank you. So we have another situation where confusion and fear and people making assumptions about someone is causing loss of life. And again, people who maybe are not complying for good reason are being taken. And the last one, I think, really shows, I mean, again, this guy had done nothing wrong, and you can read more. He loved animals, and he read to, he played violin. So Elijah Mclean was obviously, just a normal person. And here we have another misunderstanding. A 13-year-old boy with autism was shot, was it 11 times? I think, I can't find it, but yeah, several times in the back as well. And the boy's mother called the police because she needed help to get him to the hospital. And there was a misunderstanding there. They thought, right, so the interpretation was that there was can you scroll back up, please? There was a violent psychological episode going on, and that the boy had made threats and with a weapon, and he had no weapon. There was no violence. This kid, his mother, when she called the police, said he is doing this to get my attention because he doesn't know how to regulate emotions, and he just needs to get to the hospital and calm down. Right, so there was no indication that he had a weapon. And because of this, he was shot after a short foot pursuit, meaning he was chased by police and shot. So he's in serious condition. I know he had surgery. I followed this for a little bit. But ultimately, here we have, again, people making assumptions about someone with a disability or not knowing how to interact with them. The mother asks, why didn't they use less aggressive tools like tasers or rubber bullets? She says he's a small child. Why don't you just tackle him? You're big police officers with massive amounts of resources. So, yeah, we have, again, this is a common thing for people. I've noticed when I was researching this, several people with autism had been through traumatic experiences like this. And something I'd like to talk about now is sort of stereotypes. And I'm not going to pull up any articles for this because I think this is fairly common knowledge, but you can kind of do your own research if you'd like. So let's see. Right. So I think we've all seen, for example, Star Wars, Detective Pikachu. Let me think of another one. Well, Nightmare on Elm Street films, right? So one thing these three randomly selected movies from the front of my brain have in common is that they have a very evil, murderous, physically disabled person as the lead villain. Darth Vader, all of them are kind of trying to get revenge on someone for the fact that they're disabled. It's a common trope, and you can't watch a horror movie without there being some, quote, scary asylum and like a wheelchair ominously rolling into view. And I think that whether intentionally or not, people are kind of taught to be afraid of disability. I mean, I can't walk down the street to class without people looking like, where'd she come from? What is she doing here? So I think this is a huge part of it. One, people don't know that we're here, and once we are here, it freaks them out. And this is, I think, even more of an issue for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. You get all these stereotypes about, quote, crazy people. And, I think we blame crime on people with disabilities. When you hear about some kind of terrible thing that's happened, a shooting, or you always hear people say, oh, that person wasn't, quote, right. You'd have to be, quote, insane to do that. But the truth is that there is no disability that makes you cruel. There is no DSM classification that says this neurotype makes someone dangerous. And the truth is that disabled people are way more at risk from ourselves and from other people being afraid of us than other people are from us. We're more likely to be abused. We're more likely to have this happen. So it's hard to deal with hearing people say, "Oh, this terrible person was crazy," because, we get called crazy too. And I know it may seem odd for me to speak about this. I'm physically disabled, but, I do have anxiety, I do have depression, and sometimes people call me that. I'm not always easy to live with, but there is no diagnosis that's to blame for people. People can be selfish and cruel and borderline evil no matter what type of brain or body they have. So rather than being afraid of people with disabilities and scapegoating them when things go wrong, I think it's important that everyone learn to see us as people, and that we learn to see ourselves as people. And one thing why I decided to present this on a news source primarily for disabled people, not, for allies necessarily, but sometimes family members, is that it's important to know your rights and to know when you're at risk. Like let's say I found out, like I did Ancestry.com or something, and I found out that my family was at risk for some terminal illness. And there were prevention methods. Would I not want to warn them and say, hey, if you do this, keep in mind that this could happen and that you should take every possible precaution to protect yourselves. So, and I think, so first of all, be careful when you're dealing with crime and the justice system and these kinds of interactions, but also know that you don't deserve to be treated like a monster. You have the same rights as anyone. You have the right to a lawyer. You have all of the same you should have all the same opportunities as anyone else in your position. So I think these two communities, disabled, non-disabled, neurotypical, neurodivergent, everyone needs to sort of really understand personhood looks so many different ways. And if we can get that resolved, then this doesn't have to happen. And another thing I'd like to bring in here is one of the main organizations, one of the only organizations really reaching out and trying to resolve this issue. Again, 50% of people with disabilities being the ones, or 50% of people killed by police being disabled, is not a normal statistic. It's not, that's way above average. We account for 20% of the population, so that shouldn't be possible unless there's discrimination and things like this at play. So one of the main organizations who tackles this kind of issue, who is here to sort of fix all of the discrimination and biases in the justice system, is Black Lives Matter. And you can research Black Disabled Lives Matter anytime, and there's tons of resources. Because when you put these two identities together, then people are even more at risk of assumptions being made about them. Furthermore, people of color, Black, Indigenous people of color, they're all more likely to be disabled. This community is not just white or not just straight. There are so many people that could be impacted. And it's so important to make sure that everyone has the right to protection under the law. Because once one community falls, then it's not safe for anyone. So I know people are going to be, again, I'm going to lose you here, probably. But, no one deserves to die by accident, tragically like this. Especially, you can look up children with autism and then police, and then it's such a thing. So, yeah. There's so much fear of so many people. And, it doesn't have to be this way. There are so many activists and so many people from all different walks of life trying to fix this. So I think we should have some solidarity there. Let's team up because there's a lot of misinformation and a lot of lies, but I'm only here presenting the truth so that everyone, my unofficial extended disabled family, can protect themselves and be in the best place possible. So thank you. I'm going to see if there's any questions. I feel like my thing here is not working very well, but I think we're good. See, I don't see Alex, so okay. So thank you so much for your time, and remember, I just want to stress again that this issue is not hopeless. There are so many organizations working really hard. Okay, maybe not as many as I would like, I will admit that. But this is a big topic within disability community, disability justice organizations, and I'm really looking forward to seeing change be made. And the more people that know that this is a problem, the easier it'll be to get it worked on. I mean, there are cities, when I was researching for this, there are cities that are making good training programs to help police officers and courts and juries know that disabled people are here and that we're not inherently a problem. And when this can happen, and when everyone can see each person as an individual and not rely on stereotypes to say, oh, well, they definitely did it because they're this and they're that, then we can actually have a functional system that's fair to everyone and give everyone the best opportunity to live as possible. So I would love that. And again, I would love for this, I'd just like to say, I would love for this to not be a thing. You know, if discrimination, ableism wasn't a thing, I could go like be a cosplayer or something. That'd be fun. Wear nice costumes, go have people take pictures of me. Sounds lovely. But it's not reality. These things are happening, and it's important that people in the disability community tell each other, hey, this is a problem. Be aware of this, vote accordingly. Be careful when, you go to court, make sure you know to ask for this and this. So, yeah. Again, nobody send Alex any nasty emails about me because, again, my job here is to help people like me to do something that can help families, and knowing the truth and planning accordingly and trying to make things better. That's what we're here to do. So thank you all so much for listening tonight. No questions so far, so I guess I've presented everything okay. There's so much more I could get into about this. One thing I saw in the last article, I think, there's one about courts, jail, and disability, that we're overrepresented in jails. People aren't getting services there either, no medications, no accommodations, that kind of thing. So ultimately, all through, through and through, we're just not getting what we need out of this. And again, this system was made with the idea of making sure that that it was fair, that only people who had truly done something wrong had the ability to, we could keep people safe from them and teach them how to be better. So again, there's more people that experience homelessness or disabled as well. So again, there's so many intersections here making this an issue for us. So please protect yourselves, protect your families. Read whenever possible, or have someone read to you so you'll know what's going on. And be careful and vote. So thank you all, and I promise this is not hopeless. I said that too many times now, but things will change, just like with every community. We're working on it. So thank you to everyone for probably the third time for listening and giving your time and energy. And I apologize if anyone has been inadvertently triggered or, just generally in a bad mental state and is listening to this. But at the same time, there are people that need to hear it, and sometimes being uncomfortable is necessary to learn and grow. So with that in mind, everyone have a good night, and we will be back. I know I'll be back on March 1st with our Disability Day of Mourning. It's very kind of on the same vein here. I won't get into it now, but check in. We'll be having that event soon, and we'd love for anyone to come and show their support for people with particularly intellectual and developmental disabilities. Physical disability is also a factor in that, but we're definitely trying to, support that community at this time. So thank you all so much, and tune back in. I'm sure we'll have some not upsetting broadcasts in the future because things are getting better. All right, thank you so much. Good night.